This is the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education Truth and Taxation Hearing, December 18th, 2012. Al, can we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady.
Present.
Terry Carney.
Present.
Al Fivehouse, present. Eric Wegener.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte. Present. Mark Berry.
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
The purpose of this meeting is to allow individuals the opportunity to be heard and to comment on the proposed 2012 tax levy. Jane, would you like to make any comments?
The certificate of tax levy that you will be asked to approve at the regular meeting reflects the resolution that was approved by the board at the November regular meeting and information as published in the newspaper under the Truth and Taxation Act. And that's the opportunity for public to speak to the proposed tax levy.
Did you have any comments?
No, I think we should be all set. The information has been on our website, so.
Any comments from board members? Any comments from the public? Kate, Ann?
Shauna?
Shauna? Okay. Shall we wait a few minutes to see if anybody else arrives?
Sure.
I think we need to wait about 4 more minutes and then move on to the next hearing.
Okay. We were scheduled for 6. So we'll give it a couple of minutes.
I want to make sure before we move into the next hearing that everybody got the link to the Illinois School Code regarding the next agenda item. Did everybody get that today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Corrupted and I can't open it. Something's going on. I'm assuming too during the next hearing we will have several of our encore kids starting to come in. So just take note of that. They are to perform at 7 o'clock this evening, or will be.
Looking forward to it.
Now, do we stay here or do we go sit back in the back?
No,
I think if there's room, we should go in the back.
But it,
If there's room, we should go, yeah.
better
Room, we
acoustics.
should go in the back, yeah.
okay, it doesn't look like we're going to have anybody arrive. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing is adjourned.
From me.
Good evening. This is the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education public hearing, application for waiver of mandate. Al, could we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady.
Present?
Terry Carney.
Present.
Al Fivehouse, present. Eric Wegener.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
We are all still here.
Thank you. This is a hearing, and I'm going to explain the purpose of this hearing in just a moment, but our regular board meeting, where we're having some guesting for us this evening, will begin promptly at 7 o'clock. So this hearing will be quick. The purpose of this meeting is to allow individuals the opportunity to be heard and to comment on the waiver for limitation of administrative costs application. Jean, would you like to give an overview, or Jane, what that is?
Jane start and I'll add to it.
Sure. Under the Illinois School Code, school districts are limited in the increase from year to year over executive administrative costs of 5%. It's a 5% cap. This year we will exceed that cap, and it's your budgeted expenditures over the previous year's actuals, and that's really primarily because last year we employed a part-time superintendent with no benefits and very limited salary scale, and replacing that person with a full-time superintendent, full salaries and benefits. So we are exceeding that 5%. Therefore, we need to apply to the State Board of Education for a waiver, and they in turn seek that on our behalf with the General Assembly, a waiver of this school code mandate. part of the process is to allow a public hearing for public input on their waiver request.
Jane, it's my understanding that this is the first time our district has ever applied.
Absolutely, yes.
Board members, any comments?
Nope.
Any comments from visitors?
We have to keep the hearing open. So just tell, I will let we are going to need to keep this hearing open for about 8 minutes. So we're just going to wait here and see if anybody wants to come forward and speak or come in, and then we'll move on our program for this evening in our board meeting.
Just did.
There's no way to do that.
Too late.
Getting them organized. Actually, yeah, these are all symptoms, so they'll walk them. So she's got them downstairs. And I know she told them to be quiet downstairs because if they're not organized, not loud.
So I can see it though.
Good evening. This is the Lake Bluff School District Board of Education regular meeting, December 8th, 2012. And as you've probably noted, we have some guests here this evening. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Blackmer to tell us who we have here.
Thank you very much. Thrilled to have some guests with us this evening, and I'm going to turn things over right away to Miss C and let her introduce the folks that have accompanied her tonight. Miss C.
I would like to thank you all, the administration, Dr. Sophie, Mr. Blackmer, the school board, for inviting us to perform here this evening. It's nice to see a full house. This is Encore. It's made up of 50 students that are in 7th and 8th grade. They meet 2 mornings a week, and they are here to do their holiday show for you. There are an additional, 200 students that are in the choir program in addition to these folks here, so we're really proud of that fact. So this is a wonderful sampling, and we hope you enjoy A Charlie Brown Christmas and Grown Up Christmas List. Thank you. Oh, could you put that up on the ledge there? So sorry.
Your righteous redeemed us. Happiness.
Everyone else follow, and then my box out.
Thank you.
They do a good job. Great job. I saw Joe. Last time I saw him, they didn't do that. Worked great. You did great. Yeah. The girl little who was in the pink just now talking to the dance. Yeah. She's a seventh grader. Did she do a solo?
Yeah, they could come every fourth Tuesday, that'd be great.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, how are you? Good to see you. Merry Christmas to you. I mean, even though I had your first time as a kid, even then, that was fun to listen to. Yeah.
And obviously, he wasn't expecting that. He's such a good sport. It was
unbelievable.
fantastic.
That was immediately B-Rad.
I don't even remember what I had, but I know.
That's a very good indication of how he's viewed in the building.
I mean, they did a beautiful job.
Great voices.
Yeah.
This is when they have the best voices. Well, not all.
It's neat to see the. It's neat to see the.
No. Which one of these buckles? It doesn't matter. Okay. Oh God, they're good. Oh, they're yeah. Well, that last song was what? Whoa.
Fundraiser. That was beautiful. You did a beautiful job.
Yeah, that's what exactly. I'm like yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Encore Singers. Thank you, Miss C, for being here this evening.
Thank you so much.
Nicely done. Thank you.
Holidays.
Nicely done.
And Mr. Blackmore, it was nice to see. I understand that they may be looking for a choreographer for the musical. It was nice to see you.
Clearly, I'm the wrong man.
Nicely done.
All right. We'll go ahead and start our actual business meeting now. Why don't we start with roll call, Al?
Mary Jane Brady.
Present.
Terry Carney.
Present.
Al Pfeifhouse, present. Eric Wagner.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
We are all student here.
We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We begin tonight's meeting on a somber note in light of the horrible tragedy last Friday in Newtown, Connecticut. As parents, as educators, and as residents, the senseless act affects not only Newtown, but our community and every community in America. It is with great sadness and deepest sympathy that the Board of Education and the district administration, on behalf of our community, extend our sincere prayers and condolences to the families and residents of Newtown. To honor the memory of those children and the heroic staff members who lost their lives, I ask that we observe a moment of silence. Thank you.
Well, it looks like we're going to start with our reports tonight, correct?
Correct.
And Mrs. Overman is home sick this evening, but Mr. Blackmore has his report from LBMS.
Things have been busy at the middle school. I was pleased to have the Encore kids here. We had them touring last Tuesday, making stops all over Lake County, at the library, some retirement homes. And it's one of those things that I will get letters of thanks and some of the most eloquently written letters from the folks that they've visited and I know really brought some warmth to on that day out. It's a neat experience not only for those who have the opportunity to listen to them, but also for those who are taking part in it. Our kids really get a lot out of it, so it's a great opportunity. We've also had the band concert and the choral concert recently. Both were very well attended. The students sounded great, and it's always a great opportunity to hear what has been what they've been working on so hard all throughout the beginning of our school year. So we have another concert coming up in the spring, and we'll look forward to that. The book fair was a great success, and I don't want to steal Kate's thunder on that. I know that's probably part of her report, but it was nice to have that in conjunction with our concerts. We also have had our GOB and our spelling bee, and I brag about those things. Those are typically not events that you think of students getting into and excited about, but at Lake Bluff Middle School it certainly is. There's a lot of enthusiasm for those kids who've gone through the preliminary rounds and have the courage to stand before the entire school and spell. Not something that I would be at all excited about personally, but I sure enjoy watching those kids and watching those kids do it really well. The GOB was the following week after the spelling bee, and an entirely different group of kids stood up and answered some very challenging geography questions and also did a great job. So it's been a busy time. This morning was our second our second Bluffer Buddy advisory program. I was thrilled to be able to get into every one of the classrooms where the Bluffer Buddies were conducting business. And for those of you that don't know, those are our 8th graders who've been identified as student leaders and actually conduct the advisory. And those of us who are teachers and administrators in the building join right in as part of the class. And it was really a neat opportunity to see those team building activities and see that our leaders have really taken on the role and done an outstanding job. So those are a few of the highlights from the last few weeks. We're looking forward to a little bit of a break, but things continue to be very busy around the middle school. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Next, we have Kate and/or Ann giving our PTO report.
It's Kate.
Hello.
This time. So this is the PTO report for end of November and December. I will start with the events at the elementary school, LBES. We had a time travelers event held on November 19th for our first graders. This was a huge success. The kids spend the day as in the life as a Wampanoag, learning about Native American culture. A big thank you to all of our parent volunteers and our co-chairs, Anna Thor and Emily McBain. I also want to thank Ann Stewart for coordinating our efforts to get a book for every student. Every first grader received a book on the Wampanoags, compliments of the PTO and all of our book fair supporters. Ann has also just purchased books requested by the 4th, 5th multi-age classes as well. And we are working with the staff at both schools to get each grade a curriculum appropriate book. Again, this is made possible by the funds generated at our book fair, so thank you to all who have supported them. As for our grade level social activities, this month we've had 2. The second grade families got to enjoy an evening with snacks and a magician at the elementary school cafeteria. Thank you to Michelle Petrini-Poli for coordinating that. Also, Rebecca Bailey hosted a wonderful evening at her home for the parents of the 4th grade students this past Friday. This Friday at LBES will be the classroom holiday parties with gifts for the teachers coordinated by the headroom parents. Also, the PTO and its troops of bakers is bringing holiday cookies for the staff to enjoy tomorrow. Gifts were also given to our great facilities team at both schools. At LBMS, the holiday boutique was held in November. The LBMS PTO made $1,600 in profit, which is the same as last year. However, we had a much larger attendance this year, thanks to including the elementary school choir at the performance at the event and perhaps changing the location. The LBMS yearbooks are still on sale in the web store, and we need parents to go buy those, please. Book Fair, as Nate mentioned, was held during the concerts on December 5th and 6th. This was our most successful LBMS book fair to date, bringing in $3,200 of scholastic dollars. A big thank you to Sherry Spath, the chairperson, and all of our parent volunteers. And those scholastic dollars will be used to help buy books for LBMS library. The 8th grade social event was a big hit with over 40 students participating. Thank you to Ann Hardy and Matt Kerouac for organizing a scavenger hunt and raffle with pizza. Today, a group of our elves gathered at Mary Jane Brady's house and packed dozens of homemade cookies into cookie boxes for the entire LBMS staff. Thank you to all of our bakers and packers. The PTO is planning more events for 2013 to bring our families together, including a family science night and maybe an opera night, so details to come. Until then, we wish you a restful and happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Sophie? Superintendent report?
Thank you to our PTO for all your support in our schools. I just want to share a couple items this evening. I did attend a meeting on Saturday morning that Senator Garrett hosted on pension reform. It was 2 hours of a lot of information and a lot of frustration. I think that there were many board members as well as superintendents in the audience. I did spend some time introducing myself to Julie Morrison, who will not only be representing this area, but now with the redistricting, it's extended to the Palatine area at this point, so it's grown. I also introduced myself to Daniel Biss and Elaine Necritz, who are the co-writers of the pension bill. As you know, districts will be assuming anywhere from 6 to 9% or more of state responsibility for pensions in the future. And I do believe that there has to be pension reform, without a question. I'm concerned that the monies will be coming from all of our ed funds, which eventually will be taking away from programs and staffing. There is a great deal of uncertainty as to how long the phase-in is going to take, as well as exactly how much financial responsibility will actually go on to the school districts. On a much broader level, and I did share this at the session, I have been told that enrollments in administrative classes throughout the state have really decreased. All of my colleagues are concerned about the fact that the best and brightest are no longer going into education in the past couple of years. And now teacher leaders who we would be reaching out and recruiting and grooming are no longer considering going into administration due to all the time investment, the stress levels, and monetary considerations. The other big issue to me is what this is doing globally to the state of education in Illinois. One of the board members that was present on Saturday shared that his son is a senior. He's getting ready to student teach, and he looked at neighboring states and determined that the neighboring states were a lot more enticing rather than coming to Illinois, and that just about broke my heart hearing stories like that. We have been told that some sort of pension reform will be passed in the first week of January, so that there will be a lot more to come, and I believe that they're back in session January 3rd. So I will keep you all informed on that. It is December, so we've had our band and choral concerts and fine arts programs at the elementary school start tomorrow. It's so wonderful to see such a well-rounded education here in Lake Bluff. We all have a lot to be proud of. Mr. Blackmer shared at both of his concerts that 84% of all of our middle school kids are either in band or chorus or both. That's a phenomenal number of kids that are involved in that. A special note to board members, we will be having some policy discussions at our Committee of the Whole meeting in January. I have a list of policies we've discussed, but if there's policies on your mind that you would like to bring for discussion, just send me an email and we are going to be starting those discussions. We will also be talking in January and providing some preliminary data on comparables to cost per pupils for districts surrounding us, as well as what I would consider benchmark districts very similar to ours in nature. It truly has been one of the hardest times in my career, the past 4 days. It's totally inconceivable to me that anything even happened in Newtown, Connecticut, that it could really happen anywhere in our world. I did send a letter on Friday. I wanted to briefly read it and then give you all a quick update. In light of the terrible tragedy that took place at the elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, I am writing to assure you that the safety of each and every one of our students and staff is our top priority. While there is no crisis plan that can totally prevent a random act of senseless violence like this, please know that our district has a school safety plan in place that has been reviewed by law enforcement officials and practiced by faculty and staff. And this actually occurred in the spring of last year, and we're in the process of going through the cycle again and are working on our safety plans and discussion. There are always lessons learned from each incident such as this, and as those emerge, our district plan will be reviewed to implement those lessons learned as appropriate that fit our school district. Both of our building crisis teams met on Monday morning. They were both met actually by Chief Gallagher, who visited both schools and greeted children. The additional police presence was very welcomed and very much appreciated by all. Students and staff were checked on. A few students asked, hey, did you hear what happened? The teachers responded with, yes, it was terrible, but you need to know we're very safe at either LBES or BMS. A couple teachers at the middle school, as I understand, said, would you like to talk about it? And the kids said, no, not really. And then that was the end of it. We will continue that. We are also checking on staff. I did talk to a couple first grade teachers yesterday, and it has really shaken up the core of everyone who's been in classrooms with kids. So I know it goes without saying, is sharing with all of you, when you read through all the resources, it's keeping business as usual, keeping routine, and letting our kids know that they're safe and loved, and that's what we can do. But I also think during a time like this, it's important to reassure the staff that we're doing everything possible to take care of their social emotional needs, as well as reassuring parents that we do have plans in place, we do care, we love your children, they're ours. In Latin terms, and I remember it from law class, in loco parentis, I may have pronounced that incorrectly, but we are their parents during the day. So I do want to share with everyone here that we have everything in place. I have been spending some time, in fact, I talked to Mary Jane this afternoon, trying to think of something we could do to reach out to the families. I'm sure they're bombarded right now in Newtown, but if anybody comes up with something creative that we can express our sympathies, I would appreciate it. But I will share for all of us that our thoughts and prayers are with the Newtown, Connecticut families during this tragic time. So that concludes my report.
And next is President's report, and I don't really have anything further to add. Again, we wanted to thank Encore for being here, and there have been so many exciting things going on in both schools this month, and I know everybody also is looking forward to just a little break from that too. So we'll move on to discussion.
You're good. We've got Bill Melsheimer is here to give us our update on strategic planning. Welcome.
Good educators have a handout.
No, I didn't ask about communications. We can do it after discussion.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Bill.
saw him at Starbucks the other day wearing a baseball hat and jeans, and I'm looking at him going, I know this guy comes out of context.
Certainly appreciate all your comments about the recent events that took place in Newtown. It certainly brought memories back of the Lori Dan situation in 1988 when I was a principal in Wilmette. One of my very best friends was principal of Hubbard Ward School where the tragedy occurred, and the superintendent of Winnetka District 36 was a parent, had children in my school, and so in talking to my principal friend, he still has nightmares, and on occasion, and certainly these incidents bring them back. Sad occurrence, and appreciate all your efforts and your sensitivity and your concern about the welfare and safety of all in District 65. Shifting gears to updating the strategic plan, just a bit of review. As you recall, we conducted 7 individual interviews with each of the board members that lasted about 45 minutes to an hour. And then, as you can see, we've conducted 22 focus groups with administrative team, administrative support staff, elementary faculty and staff, middle school faculty and staff, middle school students, parents, community, the taxpayers group, and local officials. As we witnessed tonight, these marvelous early adolescents, the 3 sessions that we conducted with the middle school students, about almost 30 students in 3 different sessions, was absolutely delightful. Absolutely delightful. The cameo appearance tonight of Principal Blackmer is a close second. You have a calling. So, the surveys many of them have been completed. You can see that of the potential 130 administrative faculty and staff, about 52% have responded. Parents of 520, 38% have responded. We didn't have the number of households in District 65, so we couldn't give you a percentage breakdown there. A reminder went out today, and the deadline has been extended, certainly because this is a terribly busy time of the year for one and all, and so we're hoping that those numbers will bump up considerably. I would say that compared to other plans that we have participated in, I'd like to see that administrative faculty and staff percentage somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 75%. On the average, that's what we usually receive in the way of respondents. Parents, I'm sure, will bump up a bit. The community respondents tend to be around 7 to 8% of the households. Again, I don't know how this compares, but again, with the extended time period and the reminder, hopefully again those numbers will rise significantly. Once all the data is in, we'll obviously look at the board interviews, the information we've gathered from the focus groups, the data from the surveys, as well as the archival report information that we received from the district. We will analyze it, synthesize it, triangulate all of that data, and put together a draft of a report, which we believe we will present to you in February. And we'll have to work that date out with you all so that we have a significant amount of time to be able to present, for you to be able to digest. We will send it out ahead of time so you'll have a chance to look at it. a bit in advance, and then we can make a presentation and be able to respond. I believe you have board meetings on the 12th and the 26th in February, is that correct?
Yes, and the 12th would be our preference.
Okay, we'll do our best to target that date as the time to be here to present to you.
And actually, Bill, that will be our whole agenda that evening, because
Okay.
that's a big thing.
Okay, great. Questions, comments? Mark?
When has the survey been extended till, so we can tell people at home if they need to take the survey?
Friday, January 4th, whatever that date is.
Sixth.
It's before we come back to school.
Right.
The Friday,
4th is Friday.
Friday the 4th.
People can take the survey until Friday the 4th.
Yes.
And they go to our website to access it and link to it from there? Sunday the 6th.
Oh, your email says Sunday the 6th.
The what?
The email from ECRA says Sunday the 6th.
2 bonus days. Look at that.
There you go.
Sunday the 6th.
Brilliant planning.
I'm curious to know when you report the data back to us, if you're going to report it in a way that we'll be able to see sort of any differences between faculty, administrators, staff, community members, parents. Will that be reported out?
We'll disaggregate all the data
Okay.
so that you have an opportunity to view, again, how administrators, faculty, and staff responded to the questions, parents, community.
So we'll see where there's agreement and where there isn't.
Right,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
And there's some differences in the questions, but basically, they're very similar, so you'll be able to take a look at that.
Bill, thus, at this point, we've got the survey outstanding, that's the method of sort of public participation. We've already had the focus groups. Can you briefly, for our viewers, highlight really quickly how the community is going to have the opportunity to further participate as we get further along in the planning process?
That really will be determined mutually by you and us. It varies from district to district. For example, generally following the presentation to the board, there will be a period of time where you will need to digest and integrate all of the information. And we generally recommend that we set up workshops with the board and take a look at the proposed mission statement, vision statement, guiding principles, the strategic goals supported by objectives. There may be some modification thereof. From there, you need to decide how you want to disseminate that information, how you want to market it, how inclusive you want to be involving parents and community members and faculty and staff as well. Another district we're working in, the board indicated that they did not want a presentation made to them. They wanted it made to the administrative team. And for the administrative team, for there to be a workshop with the administrative team, which we conducted yesterday, 5 hours worth, where the mission, the vision, the guiding principles, the strategic goals, and the objectives were massaged substantially. And then that will be presented to the board. So each district has some nuances that are particular to them, and so it will be up to you to decide how inclusive you want to be with all of this and how transparent you want to be with all of this. And I'm sure you'll certainly want to be involving folks. And phase 3 is where, in a sense, the rubber meets the road. Once you have refined the draft of the plan and adopted it, then it's at that point where you take action. You create action teams based on the goals and objectives that have been laid out. You develop the tactics. You develop the metrics to measure the completion of the actions that are taken in the plans. You determine who will participate in the action teams going forward. Will it be exclusively administration, or will it exclusively be faculty and staff? Will parents be involved? Will community be involved? Those are decisions that you'll make down the road. And that's part of having this become a living document, so that it's the backdrop where all major decisions are made at the board level, administrative level, building level, and certainly community level. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, I guess I'm really concerned about what seem like low numbers on the responses to the survey. And I realize it's the 11th hour, but are there any methods or techniques that you've used anywhere else that there's still time for us to employ to get more surveys back from parents, from faculty, staff, you can think of?
We've driven around neighborhoods with these very loud speakers. No, I'm just kidding. Generally, it's just through the continuous reminders that, and we may just do another prior to that last week before Sunday, January 6th, just to alert everybody that this is their opportunity to
try something old-fashioned and put a piece of paper in the kids' backpacks.
Well,
We haven't done that for a few months here.
never
I think
hurts.
that might be a good idea.
Can't hurt, might help.
Yeah,
Right,
I think all of us were hoping for significantly higher
right.
responses than this.
And, and one would think, in the few board meetings I've been at, with certainly the active participation and genuine interest on the part of the community, that the responses would be higher, but they'll start coming in. They'll start coming in.
I think I can send out an email. I'll work with the administrative team to get it out to the staff. If the PTO wants to help us out and send emails to reminder to parents, I can do that in my newsletter that'll be going out Friday.
Great.
And I think as far as community is concerned, we'll get another big posting on the website by Friday for over Christmas break. I don't know how many people will look at it.
Might we be able to get the village to include it in their weekly update? They sometimes include those
Possibly.
things.
I think that might be one thing that's hurting us, because the village had their survey going for their project at the exact same time.
Okay.
So,
But they're done now, right?
I don't think they're done yet. I know, Nate, how long ago did you go for that interview?
2 weeks.
I don't think he's finishing up. When I talked to him last week, they were finishing about the same time we were, literally almost on the same timeline.
Okay.
So if you could help us, we'll send reminders. And I think if everyone can just get the word out in the community. I did talk to a few people that had called your office that wound up calling me. And I shared with Gina that I have met community members at the school so they could take the surveys. We actually typed the answers and they dictated to us what to do. So if anybody calls you, that's a service we're offering.
Very good.
So,
A full-service administrative team.
full service administration. Gave them a tour, a couple of them.
I have to say, the focus groups were terrific. People were highly engaged, just great thoughts, great ideas, well-behaved. And we gathered a lot of data, so those were enjoyable opportunities to meet with your various constituency groups. So we're moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays to all of you.
And you.
In my haste to get to our discussion, I skipped over communications. So is there anybody here visiting who would like to address the board or has a comment or question for the board? Okay. Then we'll move on to our tri-conference discussion.
That's really for the board members to kind of share with each other some of the things that you learned. I'll start, and then you guys can jump in. You should have received a school board newsletter today in your email. And if you read through the email, you will realize that one of their new services this year is you can pull handouts from any of the sessions online. So actually, Ann went through and grabbed some of the really, really interesting handouts. One of the things that I will have Liz scan and send to you is the Illinois Interactive Report Card for school board members, because I don't think any of you attended that. It's very interesting and kind of fun to get on and do some comparisons, so I'll get this out to you. So that's my contribution. It was great to be with 4 board members that weekend. What are some things that all of you would like to share?
I would just start by saying it was really fun to be downtown and see the various speakers, some of them internationally renowned speakers. So I feel like rather than monopolize the discussion, I'll let some of the other board members talk and I'll fill in at the end. One of my favorites was getting to hear Diane Ravitch speak. Mark, I know you put together some really nice notes. Do you want to start?
Sure. I attended like 5 different seminars in addition to, or 4 different seminars in addition to the keynote speakers that we all went to. On Friday, I went to a class called The Basics of Governance, which is a fairly entry-level class, but it was useful even though I've been on the board for 18 months now, just kind of tying together all the loose ends that I've picked up over the past year. And I would highly recommend that to new board members that we pick up after the elections, if those courses are offered, because there was a lot of new people there and I could just see it being really valuable for them. When I go to any of these kinds of seminars, you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes they're good, sometimes you're overqualified, or it's just not your area. But I look for the golden nugget, that one thing I take out of it. That one was something that came up during the discussions, and there's a board member from another district that talked about, well, the Basics of Governance class always comes back to this document that IASB puts together called the School Board, what is it called? School Board Governance Basics. It's a pamphlet that is a really basic summary of the way school boards interact. And this other district, I forget who they were, but I thought it was a really great idea, and it spurned a lot of discussion. They read from it at the beginning of every single meeting. And maybe that's extreme, but I thought it was a neat thing to do occasionally. I think it sounded like they just start with one board member and they read a passage and hand it to the next person and just kind of go around the room and refresh your memory of how we're supposed to interact and the level of professionalism we're supposed to maintain. It was a good refresher, so I thought it was a nice idea. I went to the delegate assembly. I was our district delegate, where something like 80% of all the districts in the state had representatives. We voted on new officers for the IASB, and we voted on 29 different resolutions which provide guidance to the IASB regarding new and current legislation. 29, I'm not going to summarize them, but it's all available online on their website if anybody's really interested in all that. Seminar about finance for veteran board members. The takeaway from that was that we've gotten a lot of great information from Jane and Jean. We talked about much of the same things that you guys have been telling us all along, so it was, if nothing else, it was really reassuring. Cost shifting is coming, and pension shift is coming, and they gave some ideas of how to potentially theoretically estimate how much that was going to be, but you had already done that for us, so it was good to just get that affirmation. Another financial one I went to was called Learn How to Monitor Your District's Finances in Today's Economy. Some of it was very tedious, but a lot of it was very practical. There was one veteran business director from another district that was just kind of going over a lot of the basics and giving some very useful tidbits. One of the things they mentioned that, I don't know if we have this, they said in addition to a fund balance policy, which is definitely on our agenda to fine tune ours, is to make sure you have a debt management policy. I don't know if we have that. And if we don't, it's something to add to policy discussions. Another thing little tidbit they said I thought was really neat in our agendas is whenever applicable, label your agenda, somehow put on there what policy might apply to specific agenda items, as well as strategic plan, or whatever your district calls it, on that agenda item. Is the strategic plan somehow reflected in that or related to that, so we can always constantly be looping back to the strategic plan when we get up and running with that. Another little nugget from that one was when you're communicating information to the community, for example, the strategic plan might be a good example. They said, consider letting your teachers be ambassadors to the district, because nobody else is as connected to the parents as they are, and they're a good way of getting information out. Things that don't need a lot of spin, I think, would be a good topics for that. Probably the best seminar I went to the whole weekend was on Sunday morning. It was a roundtable as opposed to a directed seminar. It was called Telling Your Story Your Way. It was about media, all the different forms of media that are available to us now, and how different districts are using it. Phenomenal. There's probably 20 different districts represented, people sharing their stories of what they do and how they do it. Some of the most useful information came from the person who was moderating it. She used to be a reporter, I think with a Trib, retired, but now does the media work for the IASB, and was talking about the people who work as reporters on the school beat. And it was insightful to learn that that's not always the most glorious job, and they're not always thrilled to be doing it, and how it can be very nice to help those folks by making their job a little easier sometimes, and it may end up helping you. Lots of discussions about PR, some books they recommended reading. One of the stats that we always talk about that is very similar, but they actually quantified it. They said, this is kind of a PR maxim, I'd imagine. 15% of your community loves you no matter what you do. 15% of your community hates you no matter what you do. And it's the 70% remaining that you really need to focus on. So I thought it was really a great overall thing to go to and to meet all these other people from other districts. I think hearing the other perspectives was probably the most useful thing, because it's amazing, the spectrum of perspectives that you hear. So I really enjoyed it.
You know, the school board conference in the spring, the dinner meeting, is going to be on communications and media, and it will be given by Jeff Barnett, who is Barrington's communication director and one of the finest in the state. So we'll get the information out, but that's something you're all going to want to go to. He's fantastic, and they talk a lot about things they do in Barrington for that.
They said Indian Prairie District 204 has won awards for their communications and PR stuff on their website, which is a really great place to look for ideas. So that was another highlight.
That was great.
I appreciated the opportunity to go, and I spent all of Friday in a financial oversight for school board members seminar, along with Mary Jane Brady. So, I mean, I won't go into, I don't have as much detail to really come back with as Mark did, but I think it was valuable. We spent half the day with an auditor from an auditing firm that audits a large percentage of the school districts in Illinois, and I don't remember what it was, but a very large percentage. And that was helpful because, we get the auditor reports, but I think it's nice to hear both from the auditor and then from a former superintendent's perspective, what's the board's role in looking at those issues? And probably not what most people would sort of guess, looking from the outside in. So I found that very helpful, and I think it'll inform, discussions going forward. I was interested in the conversation on fund reserves, and one of the comments that they made in that seminar was that if you fall below 50%, yes, 25% is their minimum, but if you fall below 50%, that is where you begin to have negative ratings show up on your report card. So I think that it's something that's interesting to keep in mind, as we go forward, having more discussion on what to do with our reserve fund policy. So I also attended a seminar or a workshop on involving senior citizens in the community and the schools, and I thought that was interesting. I think there are always, advantages and challenges to involving volunteers from any part of the community, but I think that they've had some really neat success with that in Highland Park and Deerfield at the high school level. So it may be something in the future for us to consider, both as a way to enrich our students' experience and to involve our community.
Now, Shelley is not here, but I know that the postcards went out. Tomorrow will be our first opportunity for seniors to come to the dress rehearsal of the fine arts program over at the third grade tomorrow. And I think it's in the afternoon. I'm going to try to make it over there if I'm back from the city. So we'll see what kind of a turnout we get. But some of you had mentioned that your neighbors and Mark, I think you said your mom received a postcard. Tomorrow's the first day. Not you, your mom received the postcard.
Did I say that?
I
Okay.
thought you
Sure.
said that the last time. I think she received the postcard the last time. So they come through, and tomorrow's the first opportunity. So I'm hoping we get a good turnout for that.
They even talked about, they made an example of there were children or students in the high school who they wanted to pair with a mentor. And so they had some students who were interested in engineering as a career, and they found a retired engineering professor in the community who was in his 80s or 90s, but at a point where he wouldn't be able to drive to the school, and he Skyped in with those students periodically throughout the year. And 3 of those 4 students were successful in entering an engineering program when they went to college. So I thought that was exciting and probably a great experience for all of them. You know, even if they decided, engineering's not for me, I thought that was a neat way to do that.
Yeah, high school does that, but it's never too early to start, right? I mean, why wouldn't you do it at the middle school too, to get kids thinking about careers?
Well, and they talked about, in your curriculum, if you're going to do a program on almost any topic, if you've got a World War II unit that you're doing for a class, or you're talking about a particular culture or heritage, they can sort of put out feelers to this group of seniors that they work with, and they can find somebody who's an expert in almost anything. Mm-hmm. And they showed students, they had video of students reporting back about, really how exciting that was for them to see, people who had real life experience and could report, what World War II was like, for example. So
And they can see them back in their community again, too.
Exactly, yeah.
That's pretty exciting. That's pretty cool.
I found the school board conference incredibly rewarding experience, because not only, in the Saturday sessions, there was a great breadth of topics covered, but in the Friday session, and all of us attended the Friday workshops, there was great depth of within the given topics that we were involved in. And I had some highlights from both sides of the conference, both the workshop side and then the survey side on the weekend. I think that it was both an opportunity to really get down into the meat of certain types of issues, and then also understand sort of environmentally what are the kinds of things as board members we should be aware of, and that was really helpful for me. The Friday workshop that I attended, the Monitoring District Performance workshop, was really instructive to me, because it reminded me of some things that I think we as board members should know about, but it's also something that I would find helpful in kind of looking forward to how we chart a course for the district in the future. We as board members sort of sit in trust of the whole community. We represent the community. And why do we monitor the performance of a district? Because it sort of helps us fulfill our proper role of oversight. We want to maintain oversight over the district's operations and policies. We don't want to get too far down into the weeds on any given issue. And an interesting quote from John Carver from back in 2000 sort of reflects this message. Authority not given away does little good, but too much given away constitutes rubber stamping or dereliction. How can the board have its arms around the system and not have its fingers in it? This is a concept, of course, we as board members have discussed at length in some of our IASB training sessions throughout the last several months, and I think it's a concept that we follow in how we govern. Effective monitoring for boards begins with establishing policy, the goals of the district. But once we set the policy or the course of action that we intend the district to follow, we have to have a means of sort of checking in periodically to make sure that it's going well, and whether the expectations that we set are met in terms of operational compliance and progress towards the goals that we set as board members. And the workshop went into a lot of detail into the different types of monitoring techniques that different districts employ, a lot of which we already have had in place for a number of years, some of which Dr. Sophie has brought to us during her brief tenure so far, and a number of techniques that we anticipate through the strategic planning process we're going to be implementing, and that sort of brings home the importance of strategic planning. It will help us operationalize a number of different monitoring approaches that we as board members are going to find, I think, invaluable moving forward, and future boards will find invaluable in overseeing the operations of the district and making sure that we're doing what we need to do. I also attended a communications discussion. Mark, you attended the Sunday session. I attended a companion session on Saturday, practical communication strategies for school boards, which I found was a relatively short session, but very informative, a lot of practical techniques for how board members can share our story among our constituents, the story of the district, and how important the public school system is here for our community, and it went through a practical series of steps that we can take both as we govern as board members, but also in our everyday lives and interacting in the community with our neighbors and friends. You know, obviously the most important strategy to effective communication is to really do the right thing, govern effectively as board members. If we do that, then the rest is easy. Each district has something unique, or many things in our cases unique about it, that we should take pride in. And one of the techniques that we talked about a bit was sort of assessing, compiling your pride facts, things that we do really well as a district that perhaps others don't, and using that as an opportunity, these stories to share with our community the things that we do really well, and to help them understand what it is to make a school district effective.
That was a big one in the one I went to.
Yeah. I mean, how many people, for example, are aware of the fact that we have this Project Citizen program here, which allows students to be sort of mentored in public policy formation, and it actually gives them an opportunity to affect public policy within our district community. It's an impressive thing that we do. Not enough people know about that, and I think it's that kind of storytelling that I think we as board members ought to be able to do. Of course, another technique I found really humorous, but one that I think we could all use as board members when we're out in the community, at the grocery store, at the post office, what have you, is practicing and refining an elevator speech. We don't have maybe 3 elevators in this community, but we have all those other moments of interaction with our peers, our friends, our neighbors, community members, and to be able to communicate effectively what's important about the public schools that we serve, why it should be important to them as well. I think that's a lesson that I think all of us as board members, because we're members of a community as much as we are servants of the community, I think we need to be able to articulate in a very effective, brief way, when we're passing by someone in the grocery store, what's so special about the district and why they should care about it. I think it was a great opportunity as board members for us to learn more about what we can do, and also to celebrate kind of what we do right here. And I think that the educational benefit of these types of conferences is immeasurable.
I do too. I learned a lot, and the exciting part was afterwards I could get in, and there were a couple sessions that were running concurrently, so you can't go to both, and it was nice to be able to pull the handouts from those two. I'm going to play right into what Eric shared, because number one, I would remind all of you, now that I'm starting to tweet every day, that I got a new follower today, so I'm up to 20. How many do you have, Nate?
3X.
And actually, I admired Nate because he retweeted something that I tweeted first this weekend.
Right.
So I would recommend that all of you sign up for Twitter, get an account, follow. The more people we get to start following, the quicker I can get messages out. And I think it was important, actually, for the 19 people that followed me this weekend, I actually copied links for resources for parents on it this weekend that they could have clicked on. and got resources on working with their kids. So another unique way, it's not something that I'm passionate about doing, but now every morning when I get up, I try to have one tweet for the day at minimum.
Is that
So-
pre or post coffee? Is that?
It's post coffee.
Thank you.
So, and if it's pre, you'll know. But that's a good communications piece.
You could tweet
The other-
pride facts.
I could tweet, that's a great idea, Mark.
Yeah,
I
links
could
on the websites.
tweet
That'd be
pride
cool.
facts.
Like, did
That
you
is
know?
a great idea. We'll tweet pride facts. Things, see, we'll. So I might retweet yours, but you'll have to teach me.
We're proud of our
Leaders.
dancing principal. That's a pride fact.
That's gonna be on YouTube.
You're not gonna
you
live
know,
that one
right?
down
So-
easily.
I hardly recognized him.
I will share with you, some of the things Eric talked about are in your annual planning and evaluation cycle handout that you all had in your board packet. I would like you to take a quick look at it, because it feeds right into the board calendar. And it really goes exactly along with what Eric just talked about as far as, and the first year is always a little off as we're doing strategic planning and as I just started here in July. But if you look through here, all the dates, and we've already started many of these things, these months then will go into the board planning calendar that we're gonna talk about next. And then as I was looking, and as you see at the end of your board calendar, there were some other suggestions at the bottom too. So if you take a quick look, and I'm not gonna read them all to you, but I'm just gonna kind of go month by month, you'll see that July, August, everything that we've done so far, July, August, they're all on here. September, I did add in September that might be a good time to do some kind of a community forum on finance, because it's right during the time that we're getting ready to do budgeting and levying. So that might be a good community type forum to talk about finance. In October, if you look on there, we've got the school report card review. One of the things that this district has, I don't know if you've done, I kind of get mixed things on it, is usually when kids travel out of state, like with the Washington DC trip, there is something that requires board approval. And have you done that here?
No.
So that might be something that I would work with Nate, I don't know if it would be October, but that might be something that every year, the board that I've worked with in the past always wanted to know about how much it costs and give the final approval for the kids to go, because they are going out of state. So it's something to consider. Next year in October, we're gonna have to be, a year from October, we'll be appointing negotiation team, getting ready to do that. And another thing that you may want to be considering as a board is self-evaluation in October. And that fit in that overall planning calendar graphically, if you saw that. Moving right along to November, short month, we've got board member day and we've got the tri-conference. There may be other things we want to add. We just had our December meeting where, we do need to start talking, and Liz already handles this for you, we've got it on consent, where we actually review the unreleased closed session minutes and destroy the tapes as per law. We've got our tax levy hearing, we've got holiday programs. In January, if you notice on here, I've got question marks. That might be based on the strategic plan where you want to hear about curriculum. How are the kids doing mid-year? What are all the wonderful things that are going on in the district now that we've had, a half a year going? This might be the time where we report on the metrics for the strategic plan. We will already be starting this year in January. I'll be completing my self-evaluation plan. As we move to February, we need to start having the staffing discussions and program planning, because as you know, legally, if we have to release any certified staff, that has to be done at the March board meetings. We have to do calendar approval for 2 years. One of the things we could consider is looking at student fees at that time. We would start a superintendent evaluation and then finish that up in March. If you look at March, we've got all kinds of things on there. You may want to be taking a look at the outdoor education fees and what's going on with that for, again, out of district, maybe out of state I don't know if they go out of state for that or not. Is that the one right over in Wisconsin? Does anybody know?
That's right.
Yeah.
The seventh graders go to Wisconsin, the
So
fifth
it is
graders
out
go
of
to
state.
Rockford.
So that might be something that you want to consider just approving and having knowledge about. You may decide not to. In April, we should every year review our student lunch program. As a reminder, we do have a program this year for kids that are on the free and reduced list. The number's not great, and the number of lunches we've ordered is not huge, but we do have a program for those kids this year. Let's see, compensation reviews, we've got board reorganization. If you look at May, if you're a district that does retirement resolutions for retirees, that would be the month it would do. We always amend our calendars based on unused, and notice I'm gonna say that again, unused emergency snow days. This might be another good time to have a community forum to celebrate what's happened in the year. We've got to balance, if we're gonna report on finance, which a lot of people wanna hear about, we should be talking about student achievement, and we should be talking about student achievement more than once. And what are all the wonderful things we're doing here in this district? Maybe one of them, we want to talk about all our wonderful social emotional programs and what we're doing for that. In June, we have a list of things. We might have a discussion on board goals. You may take the strategic plan and say, you know, Jean, we had these 5 goals, and we're doing, this board goal 3, we're doing so wonderfully on. We want to hear about it, but the data's shown us that we really want this goal. Can we add a goal and kind of decrease maybe the importance of board goal 3? We would still want to see it. So June, we have to reset and look at those goals before we start a new school year. If you notice down at the bottom then, we'll be looking at suggestions to add to this calendar. I think we should add the tri-board meetings. Mark, I don't know who's going to the next meeting. Who's going to the next meeting? Eric and MJ? I need to give you the date as an alternate too, because we got one set up in January. So right now, and I can't remember, I think it's the first,
I think I.
the second Thursday in January in case we need a sub. But the bottom line with tri-board meetings is we need to get in a set routine of maybe 3 to 4 times a year. We've got those on our schedule.
17th.
17th. Maybe we want to put on here, I know that you now have you have a couple board members that sit on, what were those teams called? Where you meet with 67 and 115, did you have a name for those? So like the Lake Forest feeder team. Maybe we want to set those up twice a year, where we start meeting with them, because that was on the list of committee.
Actually, for the tri-board too, I have the 10th and the 17th both held, but we decided on one of them.
It's the first, it would be the second Thursday. It's got to be the 10th.
Which would be the 10th then, okay.
The 10th.
I think the intention for at least what I had heard in the past for those District 67, 115, where we met with them, that we would meet quarterly
And see,
to talk about shared services and other, collaboration.
that's something I think their boards are interested in too. And I think that if they put it on their calendars and we put it on ours and put the same months, then we're held accountable for starting to have those meetings.
Right.
So, does anybody have any other ideas? Do you give me some feedback? Do you like it? Mark?
I like it. I got a couple ideas. You put some ISB training on there early on in the calendar. I thought it would probably be good to have it in the calendar in the month following new board members elected.
Great idea.
Seated. Just so it's on there, so we're always having that training when new people come on board. You have one board discussion on district goals, which was kind of what I wasn't realizing when I first read it that that's what you were talking about, but my thought was to have some kind of at least annual, if not more often, review of our strategic plan, because when it is up and running, it needs to be part of all of our discussions.
Right.
And it's a dynamic, living document that will be evolving over time. So we need to have some formalized reviews set into this thing. I think that
But is that part of the
I-
January State of the District?
And maybe I need to
whatever-
make it more clear, because really, it would be January and June.
Whenever makes sense.
January is kind of like your mid-year check, how's the school year going? June is, okay, now the school year's over, what do we need to tweak? So,
Part of our routine, we're always
well,
coming
and I
back to
can
it.
rename it too, strategic plan review, and report out.
I also like to throw out there, for maybe like early in the calendar year, January, February, shortly after we've approved the levy and we come back afterwards, to early on, start the discussion about, I called it fiscal efficiency review and planning. How can we be more efficient with the way we spend our money? Every year we need to kind of have that conversation on an ongoing basis. But it might be nice to have that, at least from my perspective, formalized in a meeting or an agenda item somewhere out there.
Actually, that fits in well with, because Jane is already starting on the budgeting cycle. So really, that's a good time to have that conversation.
When we start talking about the cost per student and all that kind of
I was
stuff.
going to bring that up as well. I wasn't even going to call it the way Mark did, but I thought at some point in time before Jane puts together a tentative budget, we should be able to have a discussion about parameters that the board provides to Jane so that she has budgeting direction, so, if it is something about, we have to do a certain amount of training for staff or whatever, we should have a discussion, make sure we understand and get on board. So it's not all just new when we see the tentative budget. I think it's good to have a dialogue, and then based on those parameters we provide, it should just fall in place, from a budgeting perspective. So there shouldn't be a whole lot of surprises, and things do come up, but I think the more direction, i.e. parameters, not doing it, but just, providing insight and input to you and Jane about what we're comfortable with, what we're not comfortable with, I think that'd be really helpful going forward.
Jane, you usually do that to some degree in the spring anyway, don't you? A little bit, just kind of talk through.
I informed the board, but there has never been board parameters established for budget development.
All right, so this would be more like, it would be more like you informing, but it would also be, because most of them are set anyway. I mean, when we talk
Well, people part
negotiations
might
and
be-
contracts.
Yeah, the salary benefit part
Is that what you would incorporate, like, are we going to abate bonds again this year? Is that the kind of parameter you're talking about?
There's a lot of discussion like that.
It's staffing, as we start talking about personnel and staffing, that's in there. I'm trying to think if there were, here's another
Capital
one.
projects could be a big thing.
Capital
depending on the
projects is
year.
in there.
Again, training is always important as new curriculum items come on board and so forth.
I don't think it's anything different. I think what it is, Jane, is compiling the discussions you've had kind of spread out at one time. I don't think it's doing anything different. than
Basically,
you've
just
normally
Jane
done.
reaffirming, these are my assumptions I'm going to be using, and are you guys comfortable with it? And I'm going to come back in July.
Yeah, that's good.
Just consolidate it.
Yeah. I think it might be helpful.
I had a couple of thoughts too. If we're going to have the superintendent doing the self-evaluation in January, it almost seems like we should be doing the discussion about where we stand on the strategic plan goals or objectives before that.
Say that again.
So I think what we said earlier was the superintendent is doing their self-evaluation in January, and in January that we would check, so we would do January and June to talk about the strategic plan. It might be just a possibility to consider talking about that halfway point on the goals and objectives from the strategic plan before the evaluation process starts. Because anything in the strategic plan is gonna dictate at least part of the evaluation for the superintendent.
Absolutely.
So you'd want to be able to present that and maybe have a few weeks to tie up a loose end before you got into the evaluation. That was my thinking on that.
Typically what has happened, and this is something that you'll have to let me know if this works for you or not, it'll be easier with the strategic plan. We would do our presentation of report out on goals, and then, I never did a self-evaluation, but I would imagine that would be done. I almost viewed our state of the district as my self-evaluation, because that was my report out on everything that everybody had done through the year. So I almost see them going together, because then we've also answered questions. I've gone through and said, okay, here's an example of what we've done with this goal. This indicator we didn't meet, these we did. And then that's when you guys would start filling out your evaluations putting them together, and then the next month we would talk about it. So they're almost done together, but I see your point with it, because they really almost have to be done hand in hand.
Well, some of them will be very much tied to what the content of your self-eval. And some of them, because there'll be objectives that are being met by other people. I mean, you're overseeing all those people, but it seemed to me like you might want to have it one a little bit before the other, but whatever.
That's really up to all of you as a board.
Okay.
It really, I mean, that's a decision, and it's not gonna feel as natural this year without the strategic plan goals in place.
The other thing is, and I know this is a value that you have, but, you know, we've spent a lot of time talking about the finances, and I think it's very important. But I also would like to see, and I know you've talked about having more acknowledgement of students and more student participation here. And I don't know how that can be scheduled, if it can be scheduled, but I think acknowledgement of students, participation of students, whether they're leading the Pledge of Allegiance, they're singing, they're presenting what they're doing with fractals, or I forget what it was. I mean, you know, math.
Oh, okay.
Whatever that is. I'm sure I said that wrong. Or teachers, you know, if we have people in the district that are getting an award, or they're working on a project that, you know, we should hear about.
That leads me to a question I actually had for all of you. When you've had staff members and kids, is this something you want to do every meeting? Or typically, is that your formal board meeting, or is that your committee of the whole meeting?
When we're on TV.
I think it helps.
We're on TV now all the time. So now that.
I think we should have something monthly at least, and I wouldn't mind seeing a group come in and do Pledge of Allegiance or something every meeting. I mean, if you don't want to create an administrative nightmare, but I think that it's really important for people to see the connection between what's going on here and the kids that we're working with.
I always like the Pledge of Allegiance, because the principals could decide on criteria for that month, and it gets kids of all different walks to come in and lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
How about tying it to our BAM program or the equivalent at the elementary school, and for kids who are outstanding citizens get to lead the pledge or something like that?
Well, and it could really, the goal for that was to get kids that sometimes might not always be recognized too, and to also get kids that are recognized. Then if we looked at our formal board meetings at the end of the month, that might be something where we recognize our spelling bee and our GOB winners, or, you know, and I've just kind of been waiting to get in a routine, which I think we're there now. I think we're getting ready to get in the routine. All our meetings are gonna be
It's not
videoed.
just good for the kids, but I think it's good for us
I
to
agree.
ever be reminded of why we're here.
So it's a
We
good
will start.
recommendation, and we'll let you solve it for us.
We will solve it. That will be an easy one. It's always great to recognize kids.
Yeah, that's a great
So.
recommendation.
You can't invite them all at once.
No.
I know you'd love to.
We will work on that. In fact, Nate, your job with that is to bring that up at admin team, so we can figure out criteria for the first month. And it's not the dancing principal. Any other suggestions? Is this, pardon me? Is this something that you would like, do you like it? Have you had one before? I know Jane has a business one.
Not in this detail.
We've
This is
asked for it
great.
in the past, and, you know, this is the first time we've really gotten it, so it's really good to have it all lined up.
And it seems like an incredible starting point. I see it as something that will obviously be tweaking as we go on, right? As you said, adding things to it, but it seems like a great starting point.
Then what?
Fit in the strategic plan somehow?
It-
Something
it
like
will.
that? Yeah.
It will. And for your information, we also have an administrative one that we work on every month and look at, things are different here than in my last district, so we've taken some things off and added some things. What I'm gonna do is clean this up a little bit, and I think it should go on our website. Because if I'm a community member and I wanna look on here and say, gee, I'm really interested on hearing about student achievement, let's at least put something on here, possible student achievement presentation, or levy discussions in September, or, gee, when is that superintendent gonna get evaluated?
Caveat at the top that, check ahead of time in case it gets shifted.
Right.
Because it's a fluid document.
Refer
That's
to
a
the
great
agenda,
idea.
because we don't know when something's going to come
That's a
up that
good
is going to
idea.
require work, so you don't want to make a commitment that we can't.
But we'll list it as a draft, but that's something that we'll rely on all of you to say, and that includes our administrators. So if Jane looks at something on here and says, that's not gonna work for this month, then I'll let all of you guys know. If you see something, hey, can we add this onto the agenda? Let me know and we'll bring it back. So it's a working document, just like our strategic plan will be. And I'm gonna start it out with draft, clean it up a little bit, and we'll get it put on the website. With some comments about, please refer to the board agenda, this is tentative.
Validate.
And I think it's great, though, too, to show the level of organization, that we do have a plan for covering everything, even though it seems like we're focused on one thing or another right now. So,
And when the strategic plan is done, we'll have more dates put in here, because you will make some final decisions on how that will all play out.
You could even, just for goodwill, put a line underneath when you put it on the website, and to the community, if they have suggestions of things that should be on our agenda, to email you, and you'll raise the subject.
Then I'll bring it to the board.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea. So that completes the board calendar discussion. Now we move to action.
Okay. Our first order of business under action is personnel recommendations. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the personnel recommendation as per the attachment? And that recommendation, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? That recommendation is a maternity leave, is that correct?
That is correct.
And given the timing of that maternity leave, I assume that we just have some part-time coverage, since it's May 20th.
I will be working with that principal, because I just got two more notices today with one more on the way. So,
All for maternity.
it's in the air, and I'm not drinking the water in the building. So in answer to your question, I don't have an answer yet. I'll need to talk to
Within weeks by the end of the school
Right.
year, so.
The other ones are not. The other ones are March leaves, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we have one personnel recommendation, which is this maternity leave, correct? Any discussion? Alfred, roll call?
Susan Ryder,
Yes?
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
yes.
Eric Wagoner,
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Terry Carney,
Yes?
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes. Okay. Approval of the tax levy. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the certificate of tax levy for 2012, excluding the debt service, in the amount of $12,953,000?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
We have talked about this and talked about this.
Covered it.
I think we covered it.
The meeting at 6:30 on it.
We have talked about this a lot. This is considerable decrease from our extensions of 2011, our extensions of 2012.
What is the amount of decrease in the percent of decrease, roughly, Jane?
We eliminated about $3 million
$3 million.
in what we're levying versus last year's extension. That includes the debt service abatement.
Right. But the total tax levy is.
About 19%, I think it was, wasn't it, Jane?
19% total.
Around that ballpark.
Total.
That's significant.
We did
We
have.
did it at one time, that's the only reason I know the number.
It's a long time
It's
ago.
on all our paperwork. We did have the truth in taxation hearing, even though we legally did not have to have that because it went down rather than up. But to give people the opportunity, and as you know, we did not have anybody come this evening to talk about our levy.
Any other discussion?
I would just like to recap for anybody who may be watching that hasn't followed the whole process, that we talked about reducing the tax levy for a period of years as a way of reducing the fund balances, the reserves that we have. And I think it seemed like there was agreement we would wait. So we're doing it for a year, but we're waiting to deal with further years after we have the strategic plan completed.
That's the abatement. You said tax levy.
Excuse me.
The
The abatement, yeah.
As well as waiting to see what happens with pension reform.
Right.
All right. Any others? Alfred? Should we have a roll call?
You betcha. Eric Wagoner,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes.
Terry Carney?
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes.
Motion passes. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves a resolution to abate debt service payments in fiscal year 2014 in the amount of $1,170,587.50?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
This is the amount that we were going to, rather than get it from taxes, we're going to move money from the education fund over to the fund in order to pay for this. And we've decided to do that 1 year rather than do multiple years this year, as Leanne was referencing. So we won't need to tax for this $1.17 million because we're moving it from the education fund.
Other discussion? Now, can we have a roll call?
Terry Carney?
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Eric Wagoner?
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes.
Okay. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves an application for waiver for the limitation of administrative costs due to the fact that in the previous fiscal year, the district employed an interim superintendent for 100 days only, thus incurring a small portion of normal salaries and no benefit costs for this position?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
Again, this is what there was a hearing on this evening. It is the first time the district has had to apply for this waiver, and it's due to the fact that you had an interim superintendent here last year. And so between going from an interim superintendent to a full-time superintendent with benefits, that incurred a cost over the 5%. So,
Other discussion? Now, can we have roll call?
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Eric Wagoner?
Yes.
Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Terry Carney?
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves a resolution supporting governmental self-insurance pooling and in opposition to non-productive legislative restraints as presented?
would you like to just make a couple comments on that one?
Well, this is legislation that has been proposed, and so as a member of the Collective Liability Insurance Cooperative, which handles our property, casualty, and liability insurance, it's a large insurance pool. I think we probably have over 200 school districts as members. They're asking each school district's boards to adopt this resolution to share with our leaders in Springfield that this really is not good legislation for school districts. So this is just a kind of an advisory, I guess, resolution to make a point with our legislators.
Do attempts like this, are they brought forth from time to time to?
You know, I don't recall this in my career coming forward, and I really don't understand what their thinking is to abolish insurance cooperatives. It makes no sense to me, because the very purpose of a cooperative is to help spread costs.
Spread the risk and lower the premium, yeah.
Insurance lobbyists?
Follow the money.
I don't know how it would benefit them either. So I don't
understand it, and it goes against everything that came out of the school consolidation study last year that they did. They recommended we pool and share resources, and then legislators have sponsored this bill, and it makes no sense. So,
Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I guess we'll take a roll call.
Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes?
Terry Carney?
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse? Yes. Eric Wagoner?
Yes.
Almost forgot to vote.
Okay. Consent agenda. Every month, the board can choose to place items that are either recurring, such as the approval of previous minutes, annual responsibilities, such as the appointment of a school treasurer for the next year, or terms of a regulatory nature that must by law be approved by the board. These items can be combined into one motion and passed together as a consent agenda. The board regularly screens its consent agenda each month and removes items that if that in the board's judgment might otherwise require discussion or public comment. This evening, the items on the consent agenda are regular minutes for November 13th, 2012, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for November 6, 2012, destruction of closed session tapes for June 1st, 2011, the P-card report, bills payable, the treasurer's report, and activity reports. Could I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion or questions about any of those items? Roll call.
Terry Carney.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Eric Wagoner.
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes. Okay, we have one FOIA request this month from David Forlow, who resides at 120 East Sheridan Place in Lake Bluff, and that was a request regarding bonds and our construction budget.
I do also want to share with all of you that as we discussed previously, there will be a message that goes on our website that states over Christmas break that beginning January 1st, and actually prior to this time, we actually began at December 1st. Any requests for information really have to be documented. We have to be going about this procedurally, but there will be a note put on the website. And we actually have a new section on our website called FOIA requests that you may want to visit. So we've given some information on what they are, and that's where we'll be posting the questions and the answers.
Does everybody at home know what FOIA is all about, do you think?
I'm sorry, Mark, that's a good point. A FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act request. Many of the districts surrounding us have been getting lots of FOIA requests, and we need to treat everybody fairly and equally and handle them. There's laws regarding providing that information, and so it's really important as we've been answering all the information and giving information out, because we all want to be transparent and be good neighbors. We still need to document those and make those public records, so we're going about and doing this the right way.
And will the website either summarize or reference the FOIA Act? And the
Yes, it's all on there.
guidelines?
So take a couple minutes to visit the website. We just added that on. Jane and Tammy worked on that probably 2 weeks ago. It looks very nice, I think.
Nancy Goldberg.
Nancy Goldberg. Nancy Goldberg, sorry. So, and it looks really nice. So, we need to be transparent with that, and it really is a good way of making sure we treat everybody fairly.
One last detailed question. Are all emails FOIable? So can email correspondence within the district and between the district and people outside the district be FOIA'd?
All emails are FOIable. There are some emails that regard students and personnel that they could actually redact the information, meaning they could take a big black marker and mark it out to protect both staff and students. But yes, they are FOIable, meaning freedom of information. So.
I wonder if any of the, I know there are a lot of school districts and other government bodies that post the FOIA information that we're starting to do, but I wonder if any of them put the amount of time that staff is spending on it. Just curious, because it seems to me that we spend, at times, a lot of staff time on responding to those, and might be
That's
useful.
something I have not seen. That's
Okay.
certainly something I could talk to in my superintendent groups, and Jane could check with her IASBO, because many of your colleagues are helping prepare reports quite often, too.
Because I know some of these requests, are quite time-consuming for staff.
So that's a new item on our agendas.
Any other discussion regarding FOIA? Okay, new business? Anyone have any items of new business? How about old business? Okay. We do intend to move into closed session to discuss personnel, is that correct? Could I have a motion to enter into closed session to discuss personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Al Pfeifhouse, yes. Terry Carney.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte. Mark Berry.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
We're in closed session.
Let's see, maybe everybody wants to go to potty break.
Yes, that will be a closed session, probably very.
Let's make sure he.